So I thought I'd give you a very good insight in terms of all the enforcement cases. My advice, beware. Now, this is the last 3 years, and look at the fines. Okay, in Singapore, the fine is up to 1 million Singapore dollars. For those of you who watch Crazy Rich Asians, not that it matters, right? But if you take a look, only till June, it's already $1 million fine. And the biggest fine went to Sing Health. It's a health organization where I must say I'm embarrassed because 1.6 million patients' data was hacked, including my entire family, not that we matter, but the Prime Minister's data was also hacked. It's a great embarrassment. The fine was about $1 million. So if you count the number of cases at half point, it's already 18, right? So let's dissect the cases to give you an idea that while here we're talking about the legal side, it's the operational part, your privacy program that matters. Let's take a look. So if you go very quickly, you will notice that no industry is spared. They're going after every single industry. It's almost as though they planned it, right? So your largest sector will be education, the financial sector. You got the retail sector. So they even went after the non-profit organizations. So our reading is that they deliberately went after all the industries to send a signal. So that's Singapore for you. Now take a look. They've gone after companies that did not appoint a DPO, that didn't have policies. But what's interesting is, as in many jurisdictions for enforcements, 78% of all cases had to do with protection, or AKA confidentiality and integrity principle. So the 78% of all cases, consent made up about 20%. And the advice for everyone here is the idiot in the organization is going to cause a lot of trouble. I'm serious, right? You can train, no legal team gets the company into trouble. It is the employee's ignorance. So if you dive through that, let's take a look. Okay, anyway, I just want to dispel the rumors that, the perception that even though it's just no lack of security measures, it had very little to do with cyber attacks. A lot of that is just pure stupidity. Unauthorized exposure of personal data, email being exposed, all the common stuff that you will find in any organization, all right? So I just want to if you take a look here, you find the most ridiculous enforcements being made. I'd like to draw your attention on a florist. Who would have ever thought a florist would get into trouble? But some idiot arranger went to pack the hampers, and with the paper fillers, it was recycled personal data in there. So there was no risk analysis done and so forth. But if you take a look here, right, this can happen to any organization. So we're starting to see the GDPR enforcements, and again, despite the science of the GDPR, you're starting to see the same cases happen, and I bet you see this in the GDPR enforcement cases here, right? So you've got visitor logbook, you've got itinerary details, a family of 4 went overseas, and they missed their flight, they wanted to claim insurance, but the silly agency went to give the information of everyone on board the flight to that family. So these are all, so the authorities have lost patience, okay? So if you take a look here, you can already summarize that if you take a look in terms of the top causes of exposures in the breaches, which you probably can find in any organization again, these are all the common stuff. I want to draw your attention on this error in data processing. We have many cases where they printed the financial statements, and guess what? They printed on both sides. 2 persons' data, and they sent to one recipient. Or 2 envelopes, two letters being sent to a single recipient, and this can happen everywhere, right? So take a look. So these are all the common areas. Poor system software design, weak passwords, and the rest, I'm sure you know, right? The usual breaches you can find. Very quickly, so that's Singapore, right? Now, what's coming is Philippines. This year, the enforcement will start. If you haven't registered with the authorities, please don't register now. Make sure you have all your measures in place, that you're fully compliant. Take a look at the number of complaints. Now, I'd like to draw your attention on the compliance investigation. They randomly pick a company, and they do the compliance check, right? Same for Malaysia. 57 inspections have been done, but I can tell you right now, the focus is on companies that did not register. You have to register, and it's time that you renew your registration. If you haven't, please go and do it. Okay? So The regulators are in. The elections is now over for Malaysia. And I'm not sure you know, the previous commissioner was murdered by, it was a very sad incident, but she didn't get murdered doing her job. It was something else. But now there's a new commissioner in place, and they are going to put a team together and enforce the act. All right, so watch this part of it. Now let's move on. So what the regulators are expecting to do, if you are operating in Singapore, just like the GDPR, the emphasis is on demonstrating accountability. So now it's not just, if you ever get in trouble, right, here's another advice. Forget about the policies. That's expected. They're looking at procedures. They're looking at codes of conduct. They're going down to the level, the details, okay? So they're expecting to see a data protection management program or privacy program. You better have one, right? Because now they're training. Now, in Singapore, we have a trust mark. Believe it or not, we have a trust mark that's been introduced, and that's supposed to segue to the cross-border, the CBPR, which is supposed to be interoperable later with the GDPR. I'm not sure that will ever happen, but that's beside the point. The point here is that there is now a trust mark. So organizations can get assessed by a third party, which I will elaborate shortly. Now, there's so many companies getting into trouble that what the authorities have done is they have introduced something called an active enforcement paper that tells you how they will dish out the fines. And they're asking you, there's two parts of it. One is called the expedite process, where you're stupid enough, you have a breach, a common breach, don't waste time investigation, just give in. And with mitigating factor, and they'll fine you. In Singapore, there's no need to go to the courts, they'll just fine you, all right? So you get a fine. The other one, of course, is you take an undertaking, that you know where the breach is. So if you have a trust mark, it will be a mitigating factor here, right? In case you don't know, they're sitting on hundreds of cases at this point in time. We know that they cannot handle the number of cases, which is why they brought this up. And they even introduced a paper on how to manage the data breaches. Okay, so let me just close up quickly. Yeah. And this is the trust mark. There are 3 assessors. And I understand Singapore will announce that they're going to be in AA soon, accountably agent, right? But right now, Singapore is pushing companies to have a trust mark. I've gone through the process. I will tell you, it's a nightmare. If you're ever looking at policies, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for processes, procedures, down to the level, okay, your Article 30 records of processing, they're looking at this kind of details. So as someone said, it's the operational part that matters the most. Okay, so to close off, there's a data, can you believe it, just last week or this week, they have announced a trusted data sharing framework, which they boast is the most comprehensive in Asia. So Singapore has announced this. It's all part of getting you to the ASEAN privacy framework. There's now guidance for organizations in terms of how you share data, right? So because at the ASEAN level, Singapore is hosting, is co-leading the ASEAN privacy framework that attempts to achieve cross-border trade within the ASEAN countries and some harmonization.